On this episode of Newt's World, Wesley Hunt is a U.S. Army veteran, Apache helicopter pilot, and graduate of West Point. He was just appointed by President Trump to the Board of Visitors for the United States Military Academy at West Point. His life is shaped by faith, family, and a strong commitment to service, built on a legacy of over 60 years of military dedication in his family. His 8 years of service, including combat deployments to Iraq and Saudi Arabia, have deeply influenced his values of leadership, duty, and honor. Here to share his unique perspective on the Academy's vital role in shaping future leaders, I'm really pleased to welcome my guest, Congressman Wesley Hunt, representing Texas's 38th Congressional District. Wesley, welcome and thank you for joining me on Newt's World.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to be here. And again, it's an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for your strong leadership to this country. And again, thank you for considering me to be on your show right now. I really appreciate it.
I didn't realize this about you, and I've been a big fan of yours since you first started running for Congress. But you actually come from a long line of military service, and your great-great-grandfather, Silas Crawford, fought for the Union in the Civil War?
That is correct. Great-great-grandfather. He was born on Rosedale Plantation, about 30 miles north of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Born on a plantation, fought in the Civil War, and that was kind of the beginning of the service aspect of my family. So my father is a retired lieutenant colonel. He served for 22 years in the Army. My sister is a West Point graduate, class of 93. So she served for 23 years active duty in the Army, retired as a lieutenant colonel. I'm a West Point graduate, class of 2004, served 8 years active duty as an Apache helicopter pilot, deployed to Iraq and Saudi, as you said. And my brother is also a West Point graduate. He is West Point class of 2005. So my parents had 3 kids. All 3 of us went to West Point. All 3 of us served this nation. And at one point in 2006, all 3 of us were deployed in Iraq at the same time for 3 months.
I noticed that on Facebook you said, your mother's the strongest of all of us.
She is. She is. My mother is the one that served those who served. And so you could imagine the prayers and a strong mother that lended her children to this country with an unwavering faith and belief in America and belief in this country, and knowing that even if it meant her children maybe not returning home, it was her duty to make sure that we preserve this nation for the future. And she lended us to do it. And I'm forever grateful for having a strong mother that was willing to do that.
All 3 of you, your brother, your sister, and yourself, all attended West Point. I mean, that is quite an accomplishment to get 3 people into West Point.
No, it really is. And the funniest thing about it is there's a saying at West Point. It says the history we teach was made by those we taught. So our instructors at West Point were usually captains and majors that graduated from West Point or ROTC, went off to get their graduate degree paid for by the military, and then they would come back as instructors during their active duty time. And so my sister went and got her master's degree in applied mathematics and then was a West Point instructor as a captain and major, while my brother and I were both cadets.
Now, what was that like to be a cadet with your sister as a professor?
Mr. Speaker, it was terrible because I had to salute my sister every single day. And unfortunately, I still do, but it was great. It was a family affair. My sister is my hero. She's the reason why that, my brother and I followed her into service and followed her to West Point. And she was a great example of sacrifice and service that was set before us.
Now, when you graduated in 2004 and got commissioned by the Army, you actually graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Leadership and Management with a field of study in mechanical engineering. How do you think West Point is unique in its ability to shape leaders?
Well, because if you think about just the history of West Point and what it means to this nation and the idea of this country lending our sons and daughters to defend this country against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and having West Point founded in 1802 as the premier leadership institution of the entire world. This is where Eisenhower went to school. This is where MacArthur went to school. This is where Grant went to school. Keep in mind that all the statues and all the buildings that are at West Point are named after prominent people that serve this country with distinction. My all-time favorite general of all time is General George S. Patton. And his statue actually stands prominently in front of the library. But the funny thing about it is, Mr. Speaker, is that his back is facing the library because he graduated last in his class. And apparently he never spent a day in the library, but he was a military savant. So that's the kind of history that's rich at West Point. And they imbue that kind of history within us to continue to serve in that manner for the future.
That's great. So when you graduated, you became an Apache pilot. What led you to pick that branch?
Well, 9/11 happened while I was at West Point. I was a sophomore when 9/11 happened. And one fun fact about West Point is the first 2 years at West Point are monetarily free, meaning that if you go to West Point for the first 2 years and then you choose to leave the day before your junior year starts, then you owe no time back to the military. 9/11 happened my sophomore year. And so my class had the opportunity to quit knowing that we were all going to go to war. And almost every single one of my classmates stayed knowing that we were going to go fight. And I had it in my head, sir, that if I was going to go fight, I wanted to fly in the Apache. The Apache is the attack platform for the military. It's a 2-seater aircraft with missiles, guns, and rockets. It is our job to find the enemy and to destroy them. And that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually get in and fight for this great nation. And the Apache was my vessel.
You did deploy to Iraq. What did you learn from that?
I learned how amazing our country is, sir. I gained an appreciation for America that you can never believe. I gained an appreciation of knowing that you are never going to have soldiers from a foreign land walking our streets and flying in our skies, because we are the strongest nation in the entire world. And we are a beacon of light, and we are the house on the hill for the entire world. And every generation we have got to defend this, or we can become like these other countries that are being invaded and have other soldiers from other countries and other helicopters and planes from other countries flying in our airspace. You see, because of West Point and because of people that are willing to die for this country, and less than 1% of this country raises their hands and say, I'm going to defend this country, because of those brave volunteers, that is why we are in the place that we're at. And I got to tell you, when you spend 2 years in Saudi Arabia like I have, you spend a year in Iraq, you have a real appreciation for how great we are. And on our worst day, we are still better than any other nation in this world. And I think you know that very well.
What was your impression of Saudi?
We live in a country where you have freedom of speech, you have freedom of religion, you have the freedoms that not everywhere has. And when I was in Saudi Arabia, let's keep in mind, this was in 2012, and women did not even have the right to drive. There was basically one religion. Everybody prayed 6 times a day. See, they didn't have the kind of choices that we have in America. They didn't have the kind of freedoms that we have in America. And when you live in an environment like that, and then you come back home and you see a lot of people complaining about some of the issues that we have here, it really puts things in perspective. I always like punching back and telling people that a lot of people fought and died for us to be in this position, and there's no place in the world like it. But a lot of people go visit places and they come back home. They go vacation on the beach or on a resort in some of these countries, but they don't live there for 2 years. We are embedded in all these different cultures. You would not believe how fast I wanted to get back home. And that's actually what made me a strong conservative. That's what made me an America First patriot, is having that perspective.
What do you think are the kind of leadership principles that you learned both at West Point and then in active duty that you find applies to what you're doing today?
Excellent question, Mr. Speaker. You know, the motto at West Point is duty, honor, and country. And you have got to understand that that's the priorities of your life. And when you're in combat and you're fighting in wars, what you also realize is that it's not about what the war is or what the war is about. You are fighting for your fellow man and your fellow woman beside you, because if you don't do your job, then they don't go home and see their family and kiss their mother and kiss their parents and kiss their father and kiss their children again. So your oath is to this country and to your fellow soldier. It's the same thing in the halls of Congress for me. And I actually view this as a deployment, except for I work for the American people, and they are relying on me to take the sense of duty, honor, and country in D.C. and again, bringing more of that to D.C. instead of the other way around. And so once that gets ingrained in you, 4 years of West Point, 8 years of active duty, you find out very quickly just how important it is to prioritize the needs and wants of this country. President Trump talks about America first, and that to me equals duty, honor, country, and maintaining those pillars for this country and putting America first.
I had the sense, just as an observer, that under both Obama and Biden, that there was a drift beginning to build into the service academies that was making them a little more woke and a little less focused on duty, honor, country. That's why I was intrigued when President Trump appointed you to be one of the Board of Visitors. What's your sense about focusing West Point on its real mission and getting beyond whatever it was that the woke left was trying to accomplish?
Yes, sir. Great question, Mr. Speaker. So West Point is also known as the United States USMA, the United States Military Academy. And there needs to be a heavy emphasis on the word military. That is the point. You hear a lot of people on the left and Democrats say, our diversity is our strength. I disagree. Our lethality is our strength. And the idea that we are the greatest military force in the entire world because we can destroy any enemy with extreme prejudice, that is our strength. It has nothing to do with your race, religion, color, or creed. It has everything to do with your acumen and your ability to serve this country and meet the standard that's set before us by the academies. My brother, sister, and I came through West Point in the 90s and in the early 2000s. There was no DEI. We worked hard. We had good test scores. We were good leaders. We got into West Point because of our acumen and our ability, not because of the color of our skin. And what I've realized when I served is that nobody cared what anyone looked like at that point. Were you good at your job? And I want to serve next to the best Americans. End of discussion. Full stop. How about we get back to that? How about we find these brave Americans that just want to serve this country and not try to divide us based on the way we look? And as a black man, sir, I'm here to tell you, I do not want anything to be given to me because of the color of my skin. I want somebody to know that I'm an American. I am a patriot. I am a father. I am a husband. I am a United States congressman. I have 3 master's degrees from Cornell University. And oh, by the way, I'm a black man and I'm proud of that. But I want to be known for all of the things that I have done in this country well before someone sees me as simply a person of color.
What took you to Cornell?
I finished up my time in Saudi Arabia, and I realized, Mr. Speaker, that I wanted one more combat deployment. So I called Cornell Combat because it was very cold and it was very liberal. Obviously, through the GI Bill, some opportunities, Cornell reached out and I applied and got in, and I was able to do a master's in business administration, a master's in public administration, and a master of industrial and labor relations. So I was able to complete 3 master's degrees in 4 years. And it was during that time that I realized that, look, liberals a lot of times can be very well intentioned, but the practical application is lost. And it helped me tremendously when I became a United States congressman because I could see how the other side thinks. They are just a little off in their practical application and how real life meets theory. And so I think what I've been able to do is take that education, take my time at West Point, take my 8 years of active duty, take my time in the business sector, meld it all together and be able to convey a message to the American people that is concise, that is academic, but at the same time, very relatable. I am so glad for my opportunity at Cornell because it really taught me how to speak fluent liberal and know exactly how to combat it.
That's wild. Now, when did you decide to run for Congress?
Today is my 6th year anniversary when I actually got into politics. I don't know if you recall, sir, but I ran the first time in 2020. I lost in a very close race. Redistricting happened in Texas, and that hard work was actually not for naught. I was able to get a very conservative district. There's 38 congressional districts in Texas. I am the congressman for Congressional District 38, and God has a plan. It just so happens to be a district that I grew up in. You see, I grew up in the northern part of Houston, Texas. I went went to a private school on the southern border of the district, and that happens to be the lines that were drawn for the district that I get to represent. And I got the Congress, sir, because my dad always said that no matter what we do, you always find a way to serve this country. In this home, we serve the Lord and we serve our country. No matter what, you have got to preserve this country and preserve the progress that we've had. We're sitting here talking about my great-great-grandfather being a slave and growing up on a plantation and fighting in the Civil War. You have 3 of his great-great-grandchildren that went to West Point and served this country. And I am a congressman in a white majority district that President Trump would have won by 20 points. I just won by 26 points. And I am living Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. I'm being judged not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. That's the America that I love. And that's the America that I want the world to see.
I remember in your very first race, the one you lost, that you just stood out as the kind of leader who was really going to make a difference. You were going to bring a kind of leadership and a kind of candor that the Republican Party and the country both need. And so far, watching you in Congress, you're certainly meeting that kind of standard.
Thank you, sir. It means the world to me. Thank you. Coming from you.
Explain the Sneaker Caucus.
Mr. Speaker, every now and again, sir, it's good to add some levity to the party and kind of cut through all the divisiveness. And I'm the co-chair of the Sneaker Caucus. And I got to tell you, it's been a joy to work with Congressman Moskowitz from Florida to put this whole thing together. And look, I grew up in a Jordan era, big fan of Michael Jordan. Jordan sneakers were just everything. And for me growing up in the 80s and 90s, and kind of to bring a little bit of that levity to Congress, I think is great. It's bipartisan. It's fun. We're going to have a sneaker day on May the 21st. And so everybody in the halls of Congress, put on your best pair of sneakers and let's take a photo to show some solidarity and have a little fun.
Do you have a particular kind of sneaker you like?
Oh, sir, I have quite a few pairs of Jordans, and my favorite pair of Jordans is known as the Jordan 11. And these are the ones that I will be wearing on May 11th.
Did you two invent this? I mean, were you sitting around and said, why don't we do something to bring us together? I have to say, as a former Speaker of the House, with 20 years in the House, I never quite thought of a Sneaker Caucus, but I like it a lot. We need a certain amount of levity in getting beyond the anger and the hostility and the fighting. I wish I'd thought of it myself, but how did you two come together and decide to do this?
It's existed for the previous few years, but really there hasn't been 2 congressmen or 2 congressmen and women that have taken this and run with it. So I remember that it was like a sneaker day and everyone wore sneakers. So then we decided to get together and actually call it a caucus, make it a day. We're going to put everything aside, kind of have a bit of a political stand down. And again, have fun with this whole thing, and I like to say that I'm the bridge between the older generation and the younger generation that's coming up. I'm 42 years old. And so I like to be able to say, hey, look, to the older generation, this is kind of what we're interested in. And then also bringing younger voters into the tent and seeing that, like Michael Jordan said, he loves sneakers. Michael Jordan said, hey, Republicans buy sneakers too. And so Republicans and Democrats can get together on something that we can all agree, just have a little bit of fun.
Okay, so I have to confess, I currently wear Hokas as my particular.
Extremely comfortable, by the way.
So I'm curious, though, because you're sort of partnered up with a group I frankly didn't know about called Souls for Souls. Walk us through just for a second. What is Souls for Souls?
Souls for Souls is a nonprofit organization, and they're working with us. We're going to donate some shoes to Souls for Souls. We're going to make it an event, and then they're going to publicly give these shoes away. And again, it's a nonprofit that provides shoes, and these are going to be some really nice sneakers from us, but shoes for people that just flat out can't afford it. So it just gives us an opportunity to be public servants as well.
As a sign of your commitment, that you're going to donate a pair of your favorite Air Jordans.
So let's be clear about something, sir. I'm not sure it's going to be my favorite pair of Air Jordans.
Okay, it's a pair of your favorites,
will be
not your favorite pair. I want to get my language right here. If people hear about the Souls for Souls project, can they contribute?
Oh, yes. You can go to souls4souls.com, and you can go there and you are able to donate directly to the website, even if you're unable to participate in the event in D.C.
To take a brief detour from the fun things, what would you say are your 2 or 3 biggest goals of this Congress in trying to get something done?
My 2 or 3 biggest goals are very, very simple. The American public gave President Trump a mandate. It is our job to get his agenda through before the midterms. And so, again, it's extending the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It's making sure that we get the reconciliation. It's getting inflation reined in. And it's ensuring that we codify some of these spending cuts that's being done by DOGE and working together to get that done. That's our only mandate. That is our only goal. And I think so far we've seen a lot of victories early on with President Trump, but it's up to us in the halls of Congress to codify that. That's my number one mission, number one goal. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, is that the entire energy corridor, and for those that don't know this, the energy corridor is tantamount to Silicon Valley in California. It's tantamount to Wall Street in New York. It is the energy capital of the world. The entire energy corridor is in my district. We have got to unleash American energy. We have got to continue to make sure that we are net exporters of oil and natural gas. And again, we can literally control the price of a barrel of oil because of the God-given resources we have in this country. Supporting President Trump, getting the oil and gas industry back on track, and unleashing American energy. Those are my 2 priorities.
Your biography says, quote, Wesley is an avid outdoorsman, thrill seeker, and family man. What's the most thrill-seeking thing you've ever done?
When you strap into an Apache 55 times to fly 55 combat air missions in Baghdad, that's quite the thrill. I got to tell you, and I haven't experienced anything like that since. And so I've done from that. I've jumped out of airplanes, rappelled from helicopters. I'm an avid motorcycle rider. My wife won't let me ride as much as I would like, although I was able to ride in Iowa for the roast and ride this past year. I got to hop on a Harley and ride through the back roads of Iowa. It was beautiful. But it's the idea of living your life to the fullest, having a good time. I got to admit, I have a 6-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 2-year-old little boy. I love them more than life itself. So my wife kind of has told me I got to cut back on some of the adventure stuff, but it's just in my blood. I can't help it all the time.
Let me ask you, when you look forward, and particularly I really identify, I have 2 daughters and I got 2 grandchildren. A lot of what I do and a lot of the reason I stay so busy as a citizen is I really worry about the country that they're going to inherit. As you look forward, what are the things that most worry you?
Mr. Speaker, we live in a meritocracy, and I never want to see that go away. Again, I always talk about my family history being a direct descendant of slavery. My father is 75 years old. He grew up in a segregated South in New Orleans. My father never attended school with a white person from kindergarten through college. And you fast forward and look at his children that all attended West Point. We've all earned Ivy League degrees. We are all excelling as very true, heartwarming Americans in this country. Let's continue that progress. And I see the left attacking that and forgetting the progress and focusing on all the negatives. I think that's one of the greatest threats that we see to our young people is the ideology that America is inherently bad. And that's not true. America is inherently exceptional. There's that. And also, I do not want to burden our children with this national debt. We are $36 trillion in debt. We are running a $2 trillion annual deficit. That is unacceptable. The greatest existential threat to our children and your grandchildren, sir, is passing on this debt to them. We have got to clean this up. This is what DOGE is all about. This is what President Trump is trying to do to grow the economy, to make sure we get inflation down. We unleash American energy and we start paying off our debt because we cannot saddle our children with that kind of deficit.
Your concern is exactly right, and that's a big reason why the reconciliation bill is so important.
Yes, it is. And we got to get started on the right track. We have to codify some of these cuts. And Mr. Speaker, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. To make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs, and we got to tighten our belts and know that for the next few months, for the next few quarters, it's not going to be easy. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do this. Sometimes doing the right thing requires some sacrifice. And we have got to do this, as you put it, for our children and for our grandchildren.
I think that President Trump represents the 5th great change in the American system after Jefferson, Jackson, Lincoln, and FDR. And so at the end of a 90-year cycle that FDR created, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be confusion, and the people who dominated for 90 years are going to be very bitter and are going to fight this. We just have to accept this is a historic moment that you and I are privileged to be part of. That's truly amazing.
Yes, sir. It is truly amazing. And I'm glad we have President Trump to actually come back and have the guts to do it. And he's operating so quickly because he knows that given the spending and the quantitative easing in the last 4 years and COVID, that a pending horrible recession is pending. And we have to get in front of this. We have to outrun this. That's why he's working so swiftly. He's working to save the economy of the American public, not this year, but for the next decade. And that's why I admire his courage in what he's doing.
I've always said that if you're going to change these large bureaucracies, you have to do it very fast, because otherwise they'll maneuver around you and they'll grow around you, and suddenly nothing will have changed.
Yes. And again, we saw what he's done in the first 6 weeks. I mean, President Trump did more in the first 6 weeks than Biden did in the last, I was going to say 4 years, but probably 50 years.
I think the only parallel in modern times is what FDR did in the first 2 years when he took over during the Great Depression. And some of it's going to be a mistake. Some of it's going to be a little sloppy. But you have to move at this speed if you're going to break through.
Yes, and I think President Trump learned from his first administration. He had time to really learn and figure out what was going on, lost the second race, then spent 4 years to re-gear and rearm himself and recoup. And then now he's hitting the ground running. He knows exactly what must be done swiftly. And again, thank God that we have a man like that with that kind of energy and that kind of resolve, because he literally is going to save our future.
Given your West Point background and your Army background, having folks learn to pull together, to be a team, is so vital when you're in this kind of a circumstance. And I'm just really proud of people like you who are willing to put your shoulder to the wheel and try to make the team successful, as opposed to whatever that week's personal ideological belief is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It means a lot. And I don't want to beat my chest, but I've never voted for a continuing resolution since I've been in Congress, with the exception of last month. And that's because the president asked us to do it. And sometimes being a team player means you don't always get to do what you want to do. You have to do what's in the greater interest of the team, especially when we have the momentum. So the fact that we're able to get a CR passed in these very tumultuous times with a very slim majority, we're actually able to jam the Democrats, which put us in a very good place and put Chuck Schumer on his heels. That's team play. And even though I didn't love it, I didn't like it, it was the right thing to do at that time. So I really appreciate that.
And I said at the time that this was an extraordinarily important vote that changed history, because the Senate Republicans didn't think you could do it. The Democrats didn't think you could do it. And with President Trump's help, Mike Johnson got it done.
Yes. I will say, sir, part of what I learned at West Point is when you're in charge, be in charge. And you may not always agree with your leader. You may not always agree with your commander. But when you walk in the room and you know someone's in charge, you respect it. We have that in our party now. We know that when you walk into this room, President Trump is in charge. The Democrats have no leader. Is it AOC? Is it Bernie Sanders? Is it Jasmine Crockett? Who knows? It could be all of the above. But I tell you what, when you look at our party, you know President Trump is in charge. And I think that's why we're going to have a very successful run.
Listen, Wesley, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to let our listeners know they can find more about the work you're doing for Texas's 38th Congressional District if they visit your website at hunt.house.gov. And I really appreciate your taking this kind of time to educate us.
Mr. Speaker, God bless you. Thank you for your wonderful service to our nation. It's an honor to be on with you.
Thank you to my guest, Congressman Wesley Hunt. You can learn more about his work in the House on our show page at newtsworld.com. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan. Our researcher is Rachel Peterson. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Penley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcast and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Right now, listeners of Newt's World can sign up for my 3 free weekly columns at gingrich360.com/newsletter. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World.